Michael Popak, Legal AF, who said Washington is a, quote, hideous place filled with people who just want to do harm. It's a hideous place, and he hates living there. I'll give you time to fill in the blank. It's Clarence Thomas appearing at an 11th Circuit conference. The conference season has broken out here, and all the right-wing MAGA justices are attending. Clarence Thomas has attended the 11th Circuit, which covers Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. We'll talk more about the 11th Circuit, which sits over Judge Cannon in the Mar-a-Lago case. You got Clarence Thomas telling the people in response to questions asked by one of his former law clerks, who's now a federal judge, that it's a hideous place and he hates living there. I got news for Clarence Thomas. He can give up his job, he can retire, resign, and let Joe Biden fill his seat. And then on the other hand, I'm going to kind of compare and contrast these two things. You got Brett Kavanaugh, who voted to overturn a woman's constitutional right to choose and have bodily autonomy and have equal rights when he 2 years ago voted with the majority to rip away Roe versus Wade. And in the Dobbs decision, he was addressing the Fifth Circuit, the other most right-wing circuit out there that covers Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. And he said that, decisions made by certain courts, and he talked about the Warren Court back in the 50s and 60s, were unpopular in their day, but now they're the fabric of American jurisprudence. They just had to stick with their guns, those rulings. You could tell what he was doing, right? He's comparing the Roberts Court that he's on, that has systemically and systematically dismantled the separation of church and state, voted against voting rights, voted against women's rights, voted against people of color, voted against people of different sexuality or no sexuality time and time again. One day in the future, their legacy, because they stood their ground and stuck to their guns, will be considered the fabric of American jurisprudence. God forbid. Let's start with Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas, who's been the focus of a Pulitzer Prize-winning ProPublica investigation into all of the dirty money he took from lobbyists, people who had business in front of the court, right-wing MAGA Federalist Society people that have taken him and his wife, Ginny, we'll talk about her in a minute, her role in the attempted overthrow of our democracy, taking them on elaborate, luxury, all-expense-paid hunting trips, yachting trips, trips abroad, trips to exclusive glamping type locations in America, so they could sit around the campfire roasting marshmallows and talking about how to overthrow democracy. All reported, none of it disclosed properly by Clarence Thomas. He talks about it's a hideous place. It's a hideous place for people who take backdoor deals with people that have business before the court, refuse to recuse themselves or disqualify themselves from cases, including about Donald Trump. And yeah, I can see it being a hideous place for you. I'm going to read you some quotes from his speech or his interview, if you will, a softball interview at the 11th Circuit, and then compare it to Brett Kavanaugh basically saying, you may hate us now. You may hate all the decisions we've made to tear down the wall between church and state and rip away a woman's right to choose and give her equal rights in America and all. But one day you'll love us. One day we'll be part of the American fabric of jurisprudence. You'll see. Just give us time and more cases. Brett Kavanaugh said 60 cases or so on average a year to the United States Supreme Court's not enough. We need more, right? We have to lift up the hood of the engine of democracy, and we got to monkey around in there more. More cases, 75 cases he wants. Let's start with Clarence Thomas. So he said that his wife and he have faced nastiness and lies over the last several years, and that Washington, D.C. is a hideous place. It's always great when you have a lifetime appointed Supreme Court justice tell you that he hates the place he lives and the people are wrongfully attacking him. Ginny Thomas, listen, she has been the founder or donor for major right-wing conspiracy theory, Federalist Society-led organizations, PACs, and other entities for a long, long time. She has regularly appears before the court. It's either her or entities that she supports submitting briefs to the court or having business in front of the court, and all of it to try to overthrow democracy. There are dozens and dozens of text messages that Ginny Thomas sent to elected officials and election officials to try to argue that Joe Biden illegally won the election in 2020 and that Donald Trump was the rightful winner of that election, pressuring people around the country. She testified to the Jan 6 committee. She was probably this close to being prosecuted by the special counsel. Only because her last name was Thomas was that avoided. Look up Ginny Thomas. I'll give you time on this hot take. She is a long-time member of cults. She had been in a cult before. I'm not making this up. She had been in a cult before she met Clarence Thomas, and then fell into the Tea Party, Jan 6, MAGA cult after. And whereas most legitimate Supreme Court justices would recuse themselves if their wife or her foundation had business before the court, not Clarence Thomas. So, of course, Clarence Thomas doesn't like that ProPublica and other media have outed him for selling his longtime family home to a right-wing a lawyer who regularly appears before the court, having another donor pay for the tuition for his nephew, taking hundreds of thousands, approaching millions of dollars of gifts from right-wing MAGA Federalist Society people and going with them on these trips, not disclosing it, and not recusing himself when business is before the court. And, that investigation was so well done that by ProPublica primarily, it won a Pulitzer recently for that. He doesn't like the fact that his $300,000 RV that he talks about, I like RVing because I'm a man of the people and I like to go to little small rural towns off of the interstate highway and meet people. That's my Clarence Thomas. Turns out that $300,000 RV, man of the people, was bought primarily with foreign money. So of course he doesn't like Washington. He went on to say, we quote, we're in a world that we certainly, my wife and I, the last 2 or 3 years, just the nastiness and the lies, it's just been incredible. But you have some choices. You don't get to prevent people from doing horrible things or saying horrible things. But one, you have to understand and accept the fact that they can't change you unless you permit that. So it's almost like he's going to commit retribution in the way he rules and the way he tries to influence the debate and the decision-making in the United States Supreme Court to get back at people being nasty to his conservative right-wing MAGA activist wife, Ginny Thomas, and for himself. He says that he's been bombed. He says, my reputation has been bombed. He says, they don't bomb you necessarily, but they bomb your reputation or your good name or your honor. That's not a crime, but they can do as much harm as they want. Listen. Remember him back in 1990, 1991 when he was being confirmed and they had hearings about Anita Hill and his relationship outside the marriage when he was a supervisor. And he said, this is nothing but a high-tech lynching of a black man. And of course, that made everybody basically vote to confirm him over quite a lot of opposition and evidence that he was unfit to be on the United States Supreme Court. This is just the same Clarence Thomas. His hair is just grayer. It's just, 40 years later, same guy blaming the media on his bad deeds. That's how he got on the court. Does it surprise anybody that he's doing it even today? He also said that his writings should be accessible to regular people, the regular people that own $300,000 RVs paid for by foreign money, those kind of people. You get to be around regular people when he rides around in his RV, he said, who don't pride themselves in doing harmful things merely because they have the capacity to do it or because they disagree. That $270,000 loan forgiven by a foreign entity that hasn't been disclosed, right? He also said it's important that he thinks that regular people have been disenfranchised by the way that they talk about the cases. And then I want to turn now to Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh had the brass ones to compare what the Roberts Court is doing, and as depraved as it's been, with what the Warren Court did in basically saying, just give us more time. Our morals will reveal themselves. He said in his interview at the Fifth Circuit, another right-wing conservative circuit, that in particular, that in some high court decisions during the 50s and 60s on monumental issues spanning civil and criminal rights, free speech, and school prayer, including Brown versus the Board of Education, that desegregated schools, that they were unpopular when they were issued. Here's the quote from his interview. The Warren Court, which is the Chief Justice at the time of these cases, was no picnic for the justices. They were unpopular, basically from start to finish, from 1953 to 1969. You think Kavanaugh was ready to work this into one of his answers? What the court kept doing, according to Kavanaugh, is playing itself. I think he means sticking to their guns, sticking to its principles. Being true to itself, I think is what he's trying to say. And, look at a lot of those decisions were unpopular, and a lot of them are landmarks now that we accept as part of the fabric of America and the fabric of American constitutional law. You think he's talking about the Dobbs decision, ripping away a woman's right to choose and giving her bodily autonomy? I'll let you be the judge. He then said this jaw-dropping comment. Federal judges should stay as far away from politics as possible. Is that what the court is doing right now, led by the right wing, in giving Donald Trump, by delay, the benefit of delay to avoid having a criminal trial on his election interference before the new election? Is that what they're doing? They're not playing politics? See, when they want to play politics, they just do it. When they don't want to do it, they say, oh, separation, 3 co-equal branches of government, that's a political question. We don't want to get involved with politics and sully our hands, except when they do, except when they want to. And so, look, I think it's important when right-wing MAGA justices and other justices take to the streets, take to the speech-making scene, take to conventions and retreats, and they give statements and comments that we report on it right here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. Now you know why we call it Legal AF. It's the podcast at the intersection of law and politics every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on YouTube, on audio podcast platforms of your choice. If you like what I'm doing, leave me a comment and a thumbs up. It helps keep me on the air, so to speak. Go over to the YouTube for Midas Touch. Go to playlist, look for Michael Popak, and you'll find it all. And if you like the law, talking about Kavanaugh and Thomas, and you want to learn more about the law at the bottom, the molecular level, the DNA of our hot takes, of our Legal AF, the law at the intersection of law and politics, for lawyers and non-lawyers alike, we're doing a Patreon, patreon.com/legalaf, where we're focused, Ben Meiselas and me are focused on teaching you the basic concepts. We don't dumb it down. We keep it at a high level, but at an informative and entertaining level, so you understand federal versus state practice. You understand criminal versus civil practice. You understand procedural law, civil rights, voting rights, women's rights, immigration rights, constitutional cases and concepts, class actions, arbitrations, mediations, you name it. We cover it with unique, specific, curated, exclusive Patreon video content. So until it's patreon.com/legalaf, it's the entry level membership is about the price of a large cup of coffee in your town. I'll put it that way, per month. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, until my next Patreon exclusive content. This is Michael Popak reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.